Brendan, James Hird said of you, I can't imagine there is a better coach in Australia in the way he develops players. How did a bloke from Chanel College via Ocean Grove turn into a bloke who had 20 extraordinary years as an AFL senior and assistant coach?
Hard work, John, I think. An opportunity, which you need. Everyone needs an opportunity. I've always sort of felt if there's one person believes in you, that's enough. And if you believe in yourself and you link that with an opportunity, then you've got a chance. But, you know, the development side, I guess, probably was born out of my first roles at AFL level and probably the teaching background at Chanel College, where you're developing young people to follow their dreams. And then at Richmond, my first job with Geesh and Ross Lyon was working with the young kids, and with Bomber at Geelong, that was the blueprint there. We drafted well, and some of those players turned out incredible what they did in the game, but they were all developed from the ground up, and that's where we all learnt to coach and learnt to develop.
So if I had to say, what's Brendan McCartney's football philosophy, what was it?
It's around competitiveness and just knowing how to fit inside a team, how to belong to a team inside a game. And, the game, we sort of get a bit carried away. We think we can describe the game and detail what the game's about, but the game actually, it asks questions of the players. It demands things. It's set up a certain way with the rules and the wind and the ground dimensions and the different ball and the bounce of the ball, and numbers can be anywhere at any one time, and the game demands an incredible amount. So it's around understanding that and helping players belong to that and fit into it.
How much of your philosophy on footy dates back to your earliest days, growing up in the Mallee? Your dad was obviously famously played one game for Richmond,
he did.
And he was the butcher at Naya. Pretty tough man he must have been himself. How much does it relate back to your philosophy with footy back to those days?
He was a hard worker. He knew what he stood for. He said what he thought, straight to the point, and supported with. He was respected because he worked hard, man's man, and he actually cut one of his fingers off in an accident at the butcher shop, and he said that he played footy 4 days later. I don't know if he did, but there's every chance he did. But country footy back then, that's sort of probably inherited the understanding and love of club, which I still have, and it's the belonging element that we all like. We like to belong to either a family or a workforce, and if we're lucky enough to spend a lot of time in a sporting club, and that's where that was first grown, I think, where the local players were your heroes. There wasn't much footy on tally back then. That was the early 60s. You might get a little bit on, you got the Saturday night replay, and then the winners in time, but pretty much they were your heroes because you got to identify them. Like father, like son. Tell us about you as a footballer, playing in the Geelong League. Yeah. Newtown, Chilwell. Tell us about Brendan McCartney, the footballer. I was just honest. I was a local kid, and we were a bit of a high-flying club. We had a reputation for recruiting a lot of big names from higher leagues, and I just worked my way through the juniors and loved it. Played with my mates. We were lucky enough to win some premierships and enjoy it. Played under two great coaches, Kevin Higgins and Huey Strawn. They were both ex-AFL players, vastly different men. Strawny he's probably be a coach that fits in now. He's a rural relationships man. He had time for all of us. When he found out that I rode my bike to my first senior game, he made sure that I got a lift home. After that, got a lift there and a lift home. Kevin was different. He was a really dynamic human, tough, demanding, led from the front, put a lot of... Very challenging, but there was also a pretty good level of support. He was hugely successful too. So I learned a lot off those two men. So you go from there to coaching, 4 flags at Ocean Grove, and then you just had a relationship with Jeff Geesh at Richmond that turned into an assistant coaching role. Yeah, Geesh was fabulous. I got asked to do a presentation in a level 1 course in Warrnambool, and it was quite humbling, and I actually didn't really want to do it because I didn't think, 1, I was credentialed enough to do it, and 2, I didn't know enough to talk about it. And Mick said, no, it'll be good for your coaching. And in that group, Kenny Hinkley he's become just a great mate, and I worked with him for a long time. And I said, what am I going to teach Ken Hinkley? He's just come away from a fantastic AFL career, and turned out Kenny was great after it. He said, no, he said, I learned a lot today. He said, I know nothing about coaching. That's why I'm here. Because back then you actually had to do it, a whole day seminar to coach your club. So that was the premise of that. So I sent Guiche left a message at the footy club and asked if I could just spend an hour with him, and he reached out and helped me enormously. And that's something I've never forgotten, and I like to do that now with community coaches, and it's all through my coaching. I've always tried as best I could to find time for people who want a hand, because that's the opportunity that I was talking about. One person extended a welcoming hand, and then he was really keen on having me work with him at Richmond, and that gave me the opportunity that I never thought would be there.
So it's you and him and Ross Lyon, effectively a three-man coaching panel?
Yep. And Tony Jewell was there as well, who was fabulous. He was fantastic, TJ. He helped me a lot coaching the reserves, when to push a button and when to let it go. And he was, old school's a bit of a general term, I get labelled with that a little bit sometimes too, but he was just a fantastic man and great around players. And Alan Joyce was there. I learned a lot off Joycey.
Gary, more SACK coaches there.
Yeah. You look at them all have been through.
Yeah, the premiership coaches too.
Well, he's sacked twice.
Yeah, there's a
TJ.
few of us.
Yeah, exactly.
There's plenty of us.
There's a few in the bracket, isn't there?
Yeah, everyone.
Even Rossi's now in the group.
Yeah.
What was a young Ross Lyon like back then?
Thinker, really clear on the game. Had a love of hard players who were team-based people, which most of us do. We love creative people and people who can change the course of a game. But in the end, your clubs are built on hard-working people that are team-based, and so are workplaces. And so Ross he identified clearly with those. He had a quirky sense of humour. He was a lot of fun to work with. He was challenging. So all the things you've probably heard about Ross as a coach, probably some of it's probably overshadowed just how good a footy brain he has and thinker on the game, and he's very good working with men. He's excellent.
Do you think that, obviously he's not coaching this year, do you think that itch will come back to him at some stage? He's got his first year off for a while in trying it out in the media?
Maybe. Maybe. It's it's a funny thing. Sometimes you do it for so long that you think, what am I going to do when I don't do it? And when you're out of it, you actually realise that it's pretty good. You can still watch the game, love the game, enjoy the game, and not have to give up your guts every day of the week for it. And so if he feels that, if he still wants to do it, he'll do it, because he's an outstanding footy person.
What's that like? Take us inside the inner sanctum in terms of the bleeding every week, riding the highs and lows, the exhilarations, but also the pitfalls of that.
I think through the course of your coaching, early on it's excitement personified, because you're living a dream that probably thousands upon thousands of Australian people want to do, and then reality hits that it's about wins and losses and results, and then and I've been incredibly humble and grateful to have the opportunities that have fallen in front of me, and then you reach a point through the middle of your coaching, middle to late area of your coaching, where you sort of got your handle across everything. You understand the game, you get what it means, you understand the industry, and that takes some time. You understand the bigger picture around training and a game of footy and your own club, that we're just part of a great game, all of us, you guys included. And then towards the end, it's a bit like playing. You just get tired of the little things, like and I know myself at the end, just the little meetings. You'd be sitting there thinking, right, the team's picked, that'll do. Let's go and do something else, or
it's not wasting time.
Yeah, you do, and talk to players at the end of their career. It's not the training and playing that wears them down. It's the ice baths, strategy meetings, appropriate reception, activation. They can be on their feet doing stuff from 8:15 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, and only 90 minutes of is actually chasing the footy around and playing. So that's sort of, does that paint the right picture?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So it ebbs and flows, but obviously towards the end, and I think you mentioned when you left Melbourne at the end of last year that you needed a break. That mentally you'd been in the game for so long that you actually needed that bit of space between yourself and day-to-day game-related stuff.
Yeah, it was that, coupled with, it was a little confronting too, that you probably reach a time in your life, and we all do in our workplace, where maybe your knowledge isn't as current or as valuable.
Ralphie and I are heading in that direction now.
Well, your knowledge mightn't be as valuable as it was 4 years ago, but it quite possibly still is, but sometimes it needs a different face to present it and a different person behind the voice. So that coupled with that, but I haven't missed it since I've been out of it, and that's a good thing. It probably tells me that I've had a good run and a good journey and time to do some other things.
You're at Geelong for probably their greatest decade, most turbulent decade, but so many highs in that and so many individual superstars as well as a couple of flags.
Yeah, it is the most rewarding working experience of my life. To where the club was at and where the list was at, and to be part of the journey all the way through and just play a small part. In the end, the players did it. They learned how to play and grew their bodies and became a great team together. But just to be there and see what's capable if your strategy's right and your vision's right and you build the right environment and you base it around the right type of people, and then you keep developing your club and developing your people inside it, and sort of in essence that's what we did. It was all around good relationships, honest chats, which took a while. It took 4 or 5 years for that to start occurring, and then there was a rocky period where not all the bits of feedback were being taken that well, and it's a funny thing. It was also a time where, and I look back now, I'm not sure we handled it super well. I think we bunkered down a bit when all the criticism came, and a lot of us probably got a bit defensive and took it personally because there was a lot of criticism. I was just talking to a great friend this morning about it was even difficult to go into supermarkets in 2006 because you'd get harassed, and there was a raft of stories floating around, and that a tenth of them were true, it was a rock concert every day of the week down there, and they weren't. We just weren't quite ready and mature enough as a club and a coaching and playing group to deliver on other people's expectations to a point. So just to be part of that, and there's a good learning in that too, not to take things too seriously, remain open-minded, because even every bit of criticism and feedback, there's a little nugget of jewel in there. There's a jewel of truth in there for yourself.
How close do you think Bomber was to going? And famously Darren Creswell was going to replace him. And you think of the sliding doors of that situation.
I don't think Bomber was ever going to go. And Creswell was very popular with an element of the playing group, and he'd built fantastic relationships with them. But the core of the playing group still had enormous faith and respect in Bomber, and he taught them how to play. He taught them to be men. They knew in their hearts that what they were learning was the right way to play, and he didn't deviate from teaching them contest method and defending the ground, and then he just let them play. And he had this genius also to know what their capacity and capabilities were in their relevant position, and he didn't deviate from that. He knew what they were capable of, and he kept pushing them and coaching them hard until they delivered it on a consistent basis. And then the maturity factor kicked in, where I think they reached a period of time where they just didn't want to let each other down anymore, and away it went.
Just on Bomber, obviously you were there pretty much through his whole tenure, how he started. How did he handle that period in 2006 when there was so much attention? You're saying that even you were copying it in the supermarkets. How did he deal with that sort of intense media scrutiny and public scrutiny?
He went quiet. That's generally what he does. What he did, and it was twofold. It was maybe a protective mechanism for himself, but also he's a very good reflector and self-analyzer, and that wasn't everyone's cup of tea when he went quiet. It was they took it as a breakdown in communication, but for him it was actually thinking his way through it. He was a fighter and a strategist and a thinker, and there was an element of him that he never lost sight of what he thought was possible with the group and the club, and he kept that pretty strong. And generally speaking, he gravitates back to core group of people that he trusts implicitly, and that's not much different to any of us. When we go through stress in our life, we tend to self-judge a bit, and we wonder what others are thinking about us, what they're saying about us. So it's a natural tendency to go where it's safe with people you really trust and love.
Take us through the summer of 2006-07. So the review's landed. He gets his stay of execution. Players are challenged. Leading team style. Was it actually leading teams?
Yep.
Yeah. How did that unfold?
We trained hard, but Steve Hocking has to take a lot of credit for this. Halfway through 2006, Hock sort of presented an idea to us that the season was effectively gone. You know, that they had to learn to train. We hadn't got the loads right, the training loads. There were a lot of things at play there that meant compatibility through the footy department wasn't what it should have been, and in essence the players suffered. You know, and it was a classic case of people's egos taking over the core business. That if you're in a footy department, you are there for the players. That's why you're employed. Day one, you know you're there to develop people and give the players the best chance. So what we did was we reshaped training, and basically they were training like a pre-season, in-season. And that wore them out a bit game day, but then they started to learn to handle the load. And we took it. It was a calculated risk, but they were starting to be mature enough athletically to deal with it. And then that transferred into a really tough summer of training where it's probably the hardest I've ever seen a group run. And we got training really specific. We simplified the phases of the game down to one or two things, and we just drove it, and it was all linked to team. And we could see massive improvements. The players were starting to see it. And then what we did was we hit a tricky patch at the start of the year where you wrote your famous article, which I think's still on the wall, isn't it, in the media department.
It's in Cookie's office.
Ralphie still blames me for that one too.
But he was the Sunday.
I was the Sunday Herald Sun sports editor.
Don't worry, like I've nailed a few things over the journey.
I think Jimmy Bartell won paced. Stevie J, a match winner who doesn't win many games. I think they were two of the great highlights from.
It was pretty close though. Otto was. Not sure on Otto and Wojo and some of these guys, but
we strafed them. Yeah.
You got them going again, Ralphie.
Yeah, but I mean that was what we hadn't seen the benefits of the second half of the year. We hadn't seen the benefits of the pre-season, and then you just went bang against Richmond the next week.
We did.
After that famous loss to North Melbourne, where Chappie called the guys out.
Oh, he did. I think all of them. There was a lot of self-reflection, but we lost. We didn't quite get the training week right week one against the Bulldogs, and they just beat us at Etihad. And they were fast back then, like red hot team. Hawthorn beat us by 2 points, who were just on the cusp of something special, and North beat us, who played in the prelim that year. So when you look back, we weren't being beaten by poor teams, and the North game was quite confronting, probably for all of us, with the reaction from the crowd and the town reaction, and but there was perspective. You know, we were down and fought back, and then they got away on us again, and we learnt something out of that. You know, it meant we realigned we set our midfield up. The conversation on the Monday was led by Jared Murphy, who, you know, when you talk about leading teams, his ability to draw everything out on the table was extraordinary. It was the person as much as the program. His ability to connect with them and just sense something was still sitting there, and he wouldn't let it go. He would just find an avenue to get it out and get it discussed.
So asking questions of the specific players about what are you feeling?
Yeah. And he led off the Monday night with, who in the room thinks, we can win a premiership. That was on the, I don't know if that's been spoken about much, the question, and not a lot of hands went up. I can't remember who put their hands up.
How many would have gone up, do you reckon?
5 to 10.
Really?
And he
Can
said
you
this
remember
year,
one person who did put his hand up? Is there one that was a believer in that?
Yeah, Lingy. I'm pretty sure Lingy put his hand up, but look, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's nearly 15 years ago, Glenn. Look,
I
I've had a few head
quick,
knocks. I've had a few head knocks and VBs since then. So,
but there was a certain number in that group who thought we can win the flag.
Yep.
Forget what the external noise is. Forget the local reaction.
So
It's clearly.
What happens next after that? How does he?
Well, then we just simplified everything. But I got the reaction from the players and the pessimism in some of them because some of them have been chipping away for 8 to 10 years. So by the time we got to that, Kingy and Scarlo and Tommy and Dasher, they've been playing for a long time, 10 years. And 10 years is a pretty strong foundation base for where your mental set's at. So I sort of understood that. And the conversation after that was around simplifying it. And Chappie was pretty strong after the game on the Saturday, and he spoke about Joel Selwood's commitment to the contest and how hard he put his body in because he was a third game player or fourth game player. We'd been really smart at that stage. We'd already given him a rest and put him in the seconds for half a game, and he had 22 tackles in 40 minutes. But we were making sure we looked after his well-being as a young player, and we're always big on that at integrating them steadily into footy. But the chat we spoke about a lot of things in that room, in the old meeting room, but in the end it came down to simplifying what the players wanted to stand for, and they came up with 3 things: inside 50s, tackles and contested ball, and that's all they wanted to know about. And through the course of that year, what we did each week was work out when we won all 3, we just didn't lose quarters. And there's a lot of stats in footy now, but those things still stand up, because if you're winning contested ball, it means you're getting over to the contest. It means there's enough intensity around the ball. If you're tackling, it means when you're second to the ball, you're putting heat on the opposition, because the game essentially is from the contest out. And if you look at it the other way, you're going to trick yourself up, because if you don't get the 10 metre, 10 metre area around the footy right, it's a pretty tough game to play. And inside 50s are a great reflection of how you're moving and how you're defending the ground. And then behind the scenes, we lent on some things as a coaching group, but not much more than that. The players, that's all they wanted to know about.
So are the players pissed off at Chappie for, not for thinking it because it was true, but for saying it externally?
Don't think so. No, they're all different, those boys. They loved and respected each other as teammates, and that's the number one thing. And part of that is they accepted personal differences. Some used to hide under the table when the media microphones were there, and others would just grab the microphone and speak up. But no, he's I see them mix every year at reunions and gatherings, and there's still a lot of respect and love between those boys.
So the next week you come out and pulverise Richmond, and the rest is history.
Yeah, we got on a bit of a roll. We had a training session. We thought we had this fancy training session planned for the Wednesday before we played, or the Thursday, and it poured rain. It was like the rain we had the other day. So we modified the training, and it turned out bash and crash, and they launched into it, and we knew then that they were ready to play. So, and it's a funny thing in footy, and I've often said this, that when you get to a Saturday or a Sunday, people outside of footy club are still talking about the previous game. But generally speaking, by the Monday night, we were done with it. We were about, okay, what are we going to stand for and how are we going to play? So the coaches and players and people inside the footy department, it was irrelevant what was happening. And the media was still, I think your story hit on the Sunday or the Saturday, the Sunday morning. It didn't matter to us. We were pretty clear. And the way they trained that week, and Jono came back in the team, and it was carnage. But there was still a couple of weeks after that where we were up and down in games, and we were fortunate enough to win a couple of those, and confidence grew from that.
The uncomfortable conversations with Steve Johnson after what had happened in the pre-season and the situation of disciplining him, how important was that, do you think, for that group going forward, as not only for him personally, but for the rest of the boys as well?
It was more the support that was offered as well. So I think we moved towards a club that had always challenged one another, but at times maybe the support wasn't there. So Jono had enormous support from key coaches and players, and then he understood that he wasn't being judged as a human being, it was his behaviour, and that was really important, and he got his head around that. The talent was obvious. He kicked 5 in front of 90,000 in his second or third game. We all knew how good a player he was, and he was urged to still be himself, but temper it a little bit, and that resonated well with him. And a couple of us took him on little outings. We jumped in the car, went to the races a couple of times, and had a couple of cans on the way home, and just quietly, and that was important. So he knew that the challenge was there for him to build his career and move forward as a person, but there was incredible support behind it as well.
He was pretty stiff. He did think it was his house when he had a few.
He did.
But he probably had half a dozen that we in the media didn't know about incidents before that as well. So
he had a pretty good run. But, but that's we drafted Jono because of his exuberance and how hard he played. And when you think back, I think Stevie's career sort of encapsulated around the freakish things he did, but he was hard. Like, he was a competitive beast, and no one went harder at the ball than Jono. And that was the given at the club, that if you played for us, you cracked in and you attacked the ball, which is still a pretty good ethos.
Just on Stevie J and Chappie, they probably butted heads, and I think they've both talked about it in their own books. What's that like? And when you know that there's a level of tension there, even though there's still respect.
We just let it be. Kenny Hinkley was fantastic with them. Probably the other thing we did in 2000 and into 2006, we probably just got the coach line players thing right, maybe that we'd probably been through a phase where there was the backs and mids and the forwards, and that got cracked, that how we defend and move the ball and set our stoppages up. Everyone's involved. Doesn't matter where you play for the Cats. So that was good learning for all of us. But that it balled over a few times. There was one day at training where it was a good blue. It was fearsome, and neither of them stepped back.
Punches thrown.
Yeah, multitude, and they landed, and they just kept walking straight at each other, and then they looked at each other and went, righto, let's get on with it. Someone went over and just said, that's enough. Yeah. The ball's coming. And okay.
What do you think when that happens, when you see that in front of your eyes?
You don't get much time to think about it. Your first thought is that's not ideal, but then you think back and go, well, they're just two hard, competitive people that were finding their own way of communicating, Glenn.
2008. 2007 first. I mean, the moment there, Brad Otten's chasing down Pettigrew, or did you had a level of confidence before that game, given that Port Adelaide was a bit banged up and
almost lost to Collingwood in the prelim? It was such a good game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Probably a lot of learning out of the prelim, that the game was put away and then they just sort of relaxed a little bit. And as it turned out, Collingwood were on the cusp of a really great 7 or 8 years. They had a fantastic team there and probably performed better in that final series than they got a lot of credit for. They won the drawn game in Perth, didn't they, against West Coast on the road, which is never easy. So there was, and Bomber, he put the leaders on notice on the Monday. He just said, look, pretty much you play like that again, you'll lose. So he was pretty strong with Tommy, and he said, take that message back to the players just so that everyone's got their feet on the ground. So he'd been through a lot of final series as a player and a captain and part of coaching group, so he sort of knew pretty much which buttons to push with his players, in particular Tommy and the leaders. The week was just solid. We didn't change anything. It grew probably when we had the open session, when the ground was full. That was probably the first reality for us. That it was pretty big. Have I dropped off task? Did I?
No, not at all.
No. That's how the week went. But the key to that program was we just kept things level, and then we got to the game we got to training on the Friday, and it was unusually tense in the meeting, and they'd had the parade and there was a bit of a delay, and they just wanted to get out and train. And I don't know how he did it, Bomber, but he asked a player who he knew he'd get a really nervous response from, and generally the response went like, "Ah!" and then he'd answer it, and the room erupted when he did it. He got his man, and everyone laughed, and it put the room at ease, and they trained really well. And then he asked the players what it looked like the next day when they played well, and a couple of them just described it, and that I can only speak for me, it gave me a pretty good feeling that they knew what it looked like when they played well. And the first couple of minutes, that's how it looked. And then the scoreboard took care of itself. Probably when Jimmy kicked that left foot goal from 50 off one step, that I went, ooh, we're away. Yeah, they're going to play some good footy.
So you've been in some extraordinary coaching bot situations. Ralphie was talking earlier about Nick Davis and the like in 2005. That must have been 2007 grand final, as seamless a role in the coach's box. I probably didn't feel it for a period for you, but was that just an easy day at the office? You knew what was going on?
After half-time. We had a good lead at half-time, but the key was to just make sure they stayed aligned to the team and their responsibilities to the day. And then I've always thought that further you are ahead and the closer the siren is, the more likely you're going to win. So it was an enjoyable day, and probably the last 15 minutes just I guess if you're in a grand final and you're spending your last 10 minutes working out who's off the ground at the end, you've had a pretty good day.
Take us through the 2005. It takes through the 2005 semi-final with Nick Davis and those 4 goals from the Clouds
in Sydney. Yeah, it was a sort of satisfying but a gut-wrenching experience, because we had our strategy in that final was Sydney were just so strong with their structure, the way they set their stoppages up, and they liked stoppages. They controlled it from the contest out. They were tough and mature, and we were up against it because we did have some injuries. We sort of limped into the end of the year a little bit, and we sort of came up with a couple of simple structural differences. And during the course of the game, we actually got them to follow us around, and they never did that. They dominated teams for about 3 years with where they stood. So we went, wow, and then we were 3 or 4 goals up. But the last quarter was probably seeing them really fatigued at three-quarter time, the group, and could we hang on? And then there were a couple of little signs that they watched one. So I call them window of opportunities, where you get a little window to do something and they seized it. So there was a window where one of our players could have helped a teammate in the air and got it out of bounds. Davis got one of his goals that way. There was another window up the other end where if a player had turned his body and taken the contact, he would have kicked a goal, and next minute it's 6 goals, and then the game's probably out. So there were just those little windows were shutting for us, and they were getting them, and then we lost our big blokes, lost little gas went off. We had some sore players, and it was just inch by inch, and then we had some opportunities to close the game down late in the game, and for whatever reason we didn't take them, and then at the end they got ascendancy and we started to react to them, and once you're reacting to another team you're in trouble. And that last stoppage we just got walked away, and why? It was the moment, it was the opposition, it was fatigue, it was so many things, but there's no script then. And that's the art of coaching and building a team that's mature, that they actually fight and think their way through those moments. And you kick the goal. I didn't see the goal because the crowd in front of us jumped up and Bomber threw his headset off and it bounced off my head. So I figured it wasn't a great result, So.
And Bomber had copped some of those performances in Sydney before.
Yeah, 1996 as a coach when Plugger kicked the goal. So. But it was almost, you could see it coming, and then we got so close to just hanging on. But in hindsight, I'm not sure how we would have gone the next week, injury-wise and personnel-wise. We'd probably come to the end of our tether. So. And
were you saying that Bomber has said we were structurally perfect, and then we just saw their players dragging our players away, and we all left that space? I think you said Cameron Ling was in the centre square at that stage. Just an illustration of them not executing in the moment of need.
Yeah, and even probably the moment. Just staying in the moment. And you hear people talk about staying in the moment. It's actually what's happening now. What do I do next? That's staying in the moment. And staying in the moment then was, hang on, no, let's pack this stoppage up so the ball doesn't get out. And even the prelim in 2007, the last couple of stoppages, we packed them up. But we lost the last game in 2007 against Port Adelaide because we got a bit crazy at the end. We were still trying to win the game instead of just kill the game off. So there's always, you win or you learn, and there was incredible learning for us from that game. 2007 Grand Final Day was a culmination of a lot of learning and learning's losing sometimes.
Yeah, with that, obviously in 2008, you had such a good year throughout the entire season. The Cats, talking of learning from that Grand Final, take us through that day in the box. Must have been extraordinary against Hawthorn.
It was tough. I still remember thinking that we would still win, that we were good enough to win, that we would find a way to create some goals. But they were tactically very good that day. But they also played incredibly well. They're great players, played well. The main learning out of that year, Glenn, for us was probably looking after our players at the end of the year. So we got to about round 21 and we had to play on a rock-hard ground in Sydney, and it jarred quite a few of them up, and we probably kept playing some boys who were worn out, and a couple limped into the finals a little bit. And we paid a price that day. The ground was incredibly hard. It was a warm day. They had a lot of momentum building. And it was a combination of things, but we just didn't play well that day. Structurally, we were off a little bit. Maybe everyone thought the result was just going to happen. As I said, like I've openly said to you, in my heart, I still thought with 5 or 10 minutes ago we could still win, and then they kicked a goal, and I thought, geez, this is... But you never realise how many times they play the the club song in a grand final until you lose one. It's a lot. They play it a lot, and you never notice when you win. It's when you lose.
How did the group handle that afterwards? Immediately afterwards, the club, the group could have actually frayed, and they didn't.
No, they were angry.
They
got angry. They got out. They were angry at a lot of things. They were annoyed at themselves, annoyed with us.
In what way?
Probably structurally how we set up that day, how we adjusted to the game, the team we picked, how Hodgie had so much influence and we weren't able to negate that. But it's unfortunately, it was a big learning day, and it was just a big public stage but I don't know what everyone else is like from that day, but it jumps into my head every day at some stage.
Every day?
Every day you have a bit of a think about that day and if you had your time again. And so there was a certain level of anger, but probably that helped a bit the next year.
And Hodgie's banged up, just sort of rolls to half back, half a dozen intercept marks. It's the kind of thing at Geelong, test him out physically, but you deny him that space to be such a commanding Northsmith presence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very easily put and easy to do, but we're also talking about, probably one of the best 5 players I've ever seen play the game. He was a phenomenal player and he was amazing that day. And his grand final record is as good as anyone's ever walked in the game.
You get to Essendon. How did that happen? And what was that 1 year like under James Hird?
Essendon one was interesting. I didn't know Bomber was leaving. A lot got written about that we went as a package deal. I had no idea until I saw him, till I got to work one day and all the media guys were out the front and he's potted around his office. I said, what's going on? He's starting to pack up books. He said, he didn't say much, Yeah. And I'd gone there that day to let Cookie know that I thought it was time to leave. It probably came out of the year before. I got the last little bit in the Port Adelaide role. They gave the job to Matty Primus, and I nearly went over there to help work with him. It's pretty close. And sort of got me thinking that maybe I wouldn't mind doing something like that myself. And more of it was that I thought the players needed different people around them. We'd been there for 11 years. I had a feeling that year that there was a little bit of resistance to what we were trying to coach, and the game was changing. Our run and carry style was being shut down by teams coming forward to defend instead of running away, and the game is now like that. So there was a bit of a defensive revolution happening in the game, and we didn't adjust to it. So probably that for me, I thought it was time for them to have a different voice and
Gary
change.
Obviously had the running stoush from external point of view with Bomber through that 2010 season. How difficult was that to manage internally?
It wasn't as much as what was written, but Gary had some frustrations and clearly he had a lot on his mind too. He was making some big decisions around that, but he was still a total pro to work with. I love coaching Gary. He was always smiled and bounced into your office, and he had a incredible will to win and a love of his teammates, but he was juggling a lot of things in his life at that time. Bomber was very much a socialist coach in a lot of ways, and by that I mean he believed in parity, and that was his background and his electrical background and how he played. He didn't play for big money and he was captain, and he didn't let go of that. And I always felt that his annoyance was around he was protecting the club and the players, so that if the salary cap got out of whack, he didn't want to see boys that he loved forced out the door. But because he honestly thought that there was enough for everyone to have a good life and a good living, and sometimes when you're a coach, you can protect that too much to your own detriment. You've got your ideals and your value system, and sometimes you've just got to bend them a little bit to let other things unfold. So that's where he was coming from, but. I did see them almost walk into each other one day and miss each other. So, and
no acknowledgement. It was just a passing.
Well, they
the
end up
office.
one saw one coming the other way, and they sort of went the other way. It was like a bit of a circle. But when I look back now, I think he was at the end of his tether. He always said that he didn't want them to have one coach their whole life. So I think he was thinking it was time to do some different things too.
You still catch up with Bomber? I mean, as you say, he goes quiet, and that's what a lot of friends would say, to the frustration they can't get to him. But he's obviously not in the greatest of ways right now.
I haven't spoken to him for a while, but I do leave messages regularly. I'm due to leave one now, or I'll do it today, actually, when I finish this. He's still incredibly loved and respected by his players and people who work with him at the club. I hope everything works out well for him. We all love him dearly, but and I've probably spoken about this a bit. Just hopefully, the industry remembers that footy great that he was. He's a phenomenal player and leader, and he was just an amazing coach. Amazing ability to teach. He taught those boys how to play footy from day one. He was holding little meetings with a projector screen and talking about when to go over near the ball. No one was teaching players that back then. They're still not teaching them now. And he helped them know what to do wherever the ball was, wherever they were on the ground. And if you can do that as a coach, you've done some amazing work. And he was doing it way before anyone was even thinking about it. We're out. Some of us are out there now talking to a lot of local coaches about how to teach it, but he taught us how to coach, taught them how to play.
Yeah, obviously, with that, you say you leave messages. Is that a regular thing you do? And I know a lot of people do leave messages for you.
Yeah, probably.
How long since you would have spoken to him?
18 months, probably 12 months. Yeah.
Not through a lack of trying, though.
Yeah, but I respect. You got to respect people's wishes at times too. The beauty of getting older is you tend to do that better. You don't sort of want to impose yourself on others and understand that we're all a bit different and let people be people.
How different was the Essendon you walked into to comparing it to Geelong at that stage? It was obviously Hurdy in and cast as a bit of a messiah. What were the pressures internally at that stage there?
They were a big, powerful club, politically really powerful. The coterie groups, which I presume are still there, they're a strong part of the club. An integral part of the club too, really important because of the financial backing and the support. So it doesn't matter where they are on the ladder, they got a lot of support. But the Bombers were a fantastic club to work at. I loved my 12 months there. The players were super responsive. They were eager to learn. They'd been developed in really well by Matthew in a couple of areas of the game, and there was a couple little gaps which we could help them with, the contest and decision making and just that probably 1 metre wall stuff, about being a bit nastier. But there was incredible talent that probably hadn't been developed. Everyone talks about developments, but what are you developing? What are you teaching? And we propped that up. We got that up and rolling. And I was actually talking to a guy this morning who coaches with one of the Essendon players at the time, and they hadn't really ever done any craft. They'd train in the morning and then they'd lift in the afternoon. But we just got them up off couches, got them out of the locker room, get out here and start working on your game. And we got on the floor with them. So it was myself, Goody, Sean Wellman, Hurdy got involved in it. And that's how they're the little craft things that help people get a kick that you've got to, and you can't make them up and you can't show them in a book. You can show them on a computer screen from a game, but you've actually got to get on the floor and work with them. And that's the fun part of coaching that hopefully is still being done. The clubs that are doing it will flourish. The ones that think you can do it all in a meeting and look at it on a screen will take longer. So that was the fun element there, and they won some big games that year, lost some games, but that was where they were at. But the foundations were there to be a really strong team and club for a long time.
What did you see in James Hird that made you feel like he could have been a great coach if it hadn't gone the way it did?
His relationship with players. Hird, he's a charismatic bloke, but a very genuine man, and he's good fun to be around. He had a great ability to take the piss out of himself and accept that, that he was learning a lot. He often said that he was the coach, but he felt like the apprentice. That he, and it's turned out there were some really good people there working around him, but he was smart enough to do that. And I remember meeting him the first time. I said that to a mate that if I enjoy talking to him, well, I'll probably go. And we had a great chat for an hour or so, and away we went. Cookie wasn't all that happy with me.
You had 3 years in your contract?
Yeah.
A couple anyway.
Yeah, at Essendon.
No, initially at Geelong. You broke a contract.
Yeah. I never signed it though. I can say that now. Barmy and I are good mates. It was in a drawer somewhere, but it was sort of a...
hidden away.
Yeah, it was an agreement that, I'd stay and help the young kids, which I was happy to. And then I got thinking, is that what I want to do? Is that something I can do later on? Do I want to be a senior coach? Can I look at another club and look at footy from it? And that was the deciding factor in the end. It was a really tough decision. I still love that club. I love the players and I loved working there. And it was really tough telling a great man like Brian that I wanted to leave, But we had a coffee a couple of months later, and we've been great mates ever since.
Sorry, you go, Ruff.
The Geelong boys were really pissed off with the Dean Robertson connection there when it was mentioned a couple of years ago. We know the Essendon supplement scandal. Did you share that anger that Dean Robertson was there? There were aspersions about what happened, but obviously Geelong boys know that they were clean as a whistle.
Yeah, nothing happened. A lot of people asked me about Stephen Dank and Wep, but and I didn't meet. I've never laid eyes on Stephen, or wouldn't even know what he looked like apart from shots in the paper. Photographs in the paper, I should say. Mug shots, yeah. But Weapon was brilliant. I love working with him. He was super.
Did you have to call him Wep?
Is that in his contract? Or?
I don't know. No,
he liked it, though.
He liked it, yeah. But he was a lot of fun. He was brilliant at his job. He's a super smart bloke, and he was good fun to work with. And the Geelong players, they loved him because he pushed them in the gym. They got to be big, strong men, and they knew that the work they were doing with him not only helped them thrive in a game, it would get them through a long season. And the young guys knew that it was setting their career up. The people at the peak of their powers knew that it was separating them from opposition players, and some of the guys at the end knew that it was prolonging their career. So that's a pretty good result for players. He was a good appointment, and I'm not sure what happened there. I wasn't there, and I don't really want to know. There's been enough done on it, but it disrupted a lot of lives and sold a lot of papers, didn't it?
Yeah.
It did. You watched that footy club Essendon implode from another club. How hard was that to watch? Relationships frayed, careers ruined in a lot of ways in a club in turmoil.
Yeah, very, because they were good people, and it was 12 months, but it was a fantastic 12 months. We built some great friendships and relationships there with staff and the players. It was sort of like, I don't know, I think it came from early on in the pre-season. Everyone just went, right, we've got some work to do. Let's get in and do it. And the players just wanted to do it. Job was when I think back now, he's a special young man and a special leader. And there was some fantastic people there.
I don't think we'll ever know what happened, but you think of the conspiracy theories. How often does this go around in football? Essendon clearly felt, well, they're doing it. Maybe they were lured into that by... How many people come to you and say, I can help you here, or they're doing something, we need to match them, we're falling short? Because that's sort of how it seemed to catalyse.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
Maybe we were protected previously, but it was a wake-up call for the industry. It was certainly a wake-up call for the AFL. I know when I was at the Dogs, they called us all in when it happened, and I think I remember asking Andrew, have we done anything wrong? But it was a blanket reminder to everyone, because there was much more at play than just us. There was Toyota's involvement. There was really the lifeblood of the game. It had really been threatened because corporate backing was being questioned, and so I got his angst. But it was out of everything, disaster, mini, large or otherwise, you generally have great learning, and the governance would probably potentially tip too far the other way now, but it's better than a lack of governance. So it was a moment in time, wasn't it? It'll stand up there with most.
Sure.
Changing.
Can James Hird come back and coach an AFL side, do you think, if he so desires to do that?
Possibly, yeah. He's been out of it for a long time. Like, I even think now I've been out for 6 months as the game changed again a bit. Is it you miss a day at work at AFL club and you feel like you've missed a year. So there's potentially an apprenticeship time again. I've never spoken to Hirdy about this, but maybe you do need to do significant amount of time. There's so much to coaching now. There's so much to the senior coaching role that we do a brilliant job with the level 3 and level 4 programs, but it doesn't prepare you. Nothing prepares you. And I remember my first day, I got there, cruised in, and then it was a whirlwind for the next 3 years. And it's sort of a job there. Each thing you do that's right, it just has all 20 things spin off that take more time to do because it just leads to other things, and it's an all-consuming job.
You did beat a high-quality field to get the Bulldogs job. Leon Cameron was in for the job. Famously, you were asked to wear the club tie, but you went the polo instead. Was that the blue-collar, working-class Macca involved in regard to that for the first press conference?
Maybe, yeah. I've never been a big suit man.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just said, no, I'll just whack. I think they asked me, do you want to wear a suit or a polo? And I said, I got the polo on. Let's do this. But it was a funny life experience. My first day there and my last day were poles apart, but they were sort of the same. The first press conference, you walk down the stairs and you come around the corner and go, ooh, wow.
Lots of people here.
It's on now. And then the last one, they were having the same amount of people in the press conference, but I was walking out the other door.
You had to get someone to bring a car around from memory, is that right? Someone moved your car.
Well, we had it all sorted. I had it in this maintenance. They were building units over the road, and I went, I don't think it's going to be a great day. So I thought I'd park there. And Ben Graham, bless his heart, he thought he'd do the right thing and move it away, but he put it where Rocket's car was and Acker's car was on their last day. So they knew where to go. Yeah. And I said, mate, just put it back over with the maintenance workers, because I already told them if it went pear-shaped, I'd come and have a beer with them on the way out at about lunchtime. And they said, we'll have the barbie ready for you. And they did. So, it was interesting. So the 2 days were eerily similar but eerily different.
Michael Klein normally gets you with the exit sign. I think he famously did that with Terry, on the way out. So 2.5 amazing years, and then it sort of turned, I don't know, nasty. How good was it when it was good?
Yeah, it was progressive and optimistic. It was challenging because we lost about 11 of our. I think we lost our last 11 games in my first year.
Yeah, 5, 17, 8, 14, and then 7, 15 the 3 years.
Yeah. We won some games we shouldn't win, lost some games we shouldn't have lost. But you could see the growth in the group, and we were pretty brave through a compromised draft period. We kept going to the draft. We were pretty brave with list management. We were pretty clear on how we wanted them to play, and we were losing a lot of games by close margins. And a lot of people think sometimes from year to year a good finish leapfrogs into a good year. It's not actually. It's close losses. If you look at historically teams that have seasons with a lot of close losses, they're the ones that progress the next year. That's been proven over a long time. So there was that side of me that was comforted by that, but there was an impatient side that, which probably led me to dive into areas that I shouldn't have, because you could see that they were maybe a potential roadblock, hindrance to where we wanted to go. Got pretty protective and defensive of what I believed in and what I stood for.
So you tinkered in areas you shouldn't have, or you just became more insular?
Probably spoke up about them more than I probably should have. Just say, look, can we do something about that, and then let it go, instead of nah. And it was the wrong thing to do, but it was coming from a place that was what was best for the club and the players. In my heart of heart, I thought this is going to help us. In fact, I should have just let it go and focused on what I was best at.
So give us an example of that, because Brett Ratton said that's what he did in his first chance at Carlton, pick fights where he shouldn't have, didn't let things go. Or, sports science or coaching. Or... Maybe
like some of the VFL stuff, yep. Just let it go, just back in what they were doing. It was an interesting time too. We didn't have sort of, control's the wrong word, but we probably didn't have enough autonomy with our developing players. And for me, the lifeblood of that club was going to be the kids and the development of them and the future. And I could see the talent. And the best way to develop it is 2 ways: at training and putting them in the right areas of the ground on a Saturday. And we weren't quite getting that. So I remember Peter asking me if I could grant you one wish, what is it? And I said, a VFL team. And he was quite surprised with that. And I said, absolutely. And it has become a really important part of their club, hasn't it? They've had enormous success on the field at VFL level, and they just keep producing players. And that model's still alive and well out there. And the list they've got at the moment is exceptionally exciting.
You talk about the development of that younger group of players. Did that come to a degree at the, in a sense, with some of the older players where the relationship wasn't as strong? I mentioned Adam Cooney, Sean Higgins and the like.
Yeah.
Was that something you worked on, or was that something that was always going to be an issue, do you think?
I needed to invest more into it when I think back. I thought probably those older guys, just coaching them was enough, and challenging them was enough when it wasn't. They needed more support from me, and probably learning and reflecting now that it's okay to challenge, but there's got to be a high level of, if there's a high level of challenge, there's got to be a high level of support. Otherwise, there's a high level of stress. And I kept the challenge going. Support wasn't there, which caused a fair amount of stress for both. And if you get 2 people in any conversation and there's a gap between delivery and expectation, the gap is pretty stressful for both, either the person with the expectations or the person, you know, requiring the delivery or producing the delivery. So that's what happened with a couple, but there were also a couple that were list management decisions, you know, and they're inevitable. And did we communicate them the right way? Potentially not, you know. And I probably, my biggest learning was I moved away from a fundamental belief that character comes first. And I was playing some people in the team that probably I was compromising my character philosophy for talent and not playing some others. And if I had my time again, you'd never get your time back, but you got to learn from it, you know, and win from it. Was the character.
So did the players become aware of that, or you just knew it wasn't the right way to go? Like, did it destabilise, or you just
maybe confuse them?
Yeah.
You know, I think selection integrity would have jumped up in their mind. I think that's natural when they hear you speak in meetings and resonate with them about what you believe in, and if they see that, hang on, that's not actually happening, that you've missed the boat with them. Then I think, you know.
So Tom Harley said of you in 2011 that, you know, you'll hit blokes between the eyes, but you will always leave them with a positive frame of mind or hint or tip. Did you just become a grumpy bastard?
Yep. Yeah, the last couple of months. Yeah, the second bit wasn't there. Not all the time. And the thing I learned about myself too was that players that probably didn't quite fit my fundamental beliefs, I'd probably push them aside a bit. And that's not right. That's not fair to them, because there's no one perfect. You know, I was expecting them to mould and shape, and I wasn't doing it myself. And I think the job, because I was trying to do more instead of focusing on strengths, I got more tired and irritable. And when you get tired and irritable, you don't do your best work. And and you know, I know my best coaching has been, and I think all of us, is when what Tommy spoke about, in your own way, you know, and sometimes hitting someone between the eyes is not brutal. It's just, you know, can you have a look at the last quarter from the weekend and tell me what you think, you know, and the vision they see might be quite brutal, or calling them out at training and say, look, there's a little drill I think we need to do. So that is strong feedback in that they're going, clearly I haven't been doing this, coach. Well, you don't say it, but it's...
You don't have to tell them they're a weak bastard at the same time. You just actually illustrate what they should be doing.
We've got to do some work here on there. But the solution is you're actually doing it with them, and the solution I don't think I was delivering.
Is there one moment you'd like to have back? One specific moment?
Yeah, the Brisbane game, half-time. I was pretty blunt with them, and what I should have done is sat down with them and just said, right, we're going to win this game, but there's a couple of things that we need to change right now. What are they? And they would have been able to tell me. And that was an opportunity to help them through a really stressful game. And they needed that from me. And I didn't provide what they needed. I did what emotionally had taken me over. You know.
What did you tell them?
That it was unacceptable effort. There was a level of selfishness. And the same message could have been delivered with them in a really positive way. It could have been, okay, how can we help Liam Picken with Zorko? What can we do? So that bringing them back to actually working together by letting them suggest it. So that reflection bit that I was going to touch on a minute ago, that I did really well for a long time, I didn't give myself time to do it. Or either I was too tired, or I was embroiled in things I didn't need to be to go, geez, how did that chat with Griff go? You know, how am I going with Sean there? Just, okay, no, I need to have a chat here.
So at that stage, we still thought this is a Western Bulldogs club that's marching along, not winning a lot of games, and then the chatter begins, and then the whispering begins, and the players are off the coach. And so, as we saw it, there was a bit of a review, and you spoke with Chris Grant and Simon Garlick and Peter Gordon, and they basically agreed to back you in, change your methods, but you're our man for 2015. Is that true?
Yeah. That was the belief. And even the night Jace took the call that Griff was leaving, we were talking to Tommy Lonigan, having a good chat to Tommy, you know, about just coming and developing, playing a couple of years there, and developing some of the young defenders, because to give Dale a hand, really, you know, he was labouring under his body was, you know, and we didn't know he was going to play for another 5 years. He's a freak, superstar. Yeah. So that was where we were at, and I remember talking to Jace, saying that day, we'll keep pushing along. He goes, absolutely, mate. Yeah, he said, I'm talking to managers and, all good. So I went to bed on the Wednesday night thinking I was going to be coaching. By Thursday morning, I wasn't sure.
How did it play out? Why did you think, I'm in strife here? Just because of what happened to Griff?
Yeah, that and the meeting. We had a meeting that morning and, just thought, it just felt a bit different.
Who was in the meeting? Tell us about what.
I spoke with Simon, really, Simon Garlick at the time, and he was fantastic. He was in a difficult position too because he'd appointed me, and in his heart of hearts, he wanted it to work for obvious reasons. And he loved the club. He's very much a Bulldogs person, and he was incredibly supportive of me all through it. But he just seemed a little bit different in the meeting.
Nothing in his words, just in his body. You could sense a shift.
You can just tell. I'm not the smartest bloke in the world, but I'm perceptive to people, and I had a heightened sense of awareness too after Griff had decided to leave.
Did that smack you between the eyes? Did that?
So this is explain the timeline to us. So Griff had decided on the Wednesday night. He declared that he wanted out, and then you met with Simon Garlick on the Thursday morning.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I'm pretty sure that was it. It might be a couple of hours out of whack, but I had a feeling Ryan would leave. He had an incredibly good relationship with Leon. Leon had been really important to him in his youth, young part of his career. So even talking to Griff a couple of times, I thought he was probably going to leave, and I was still up for it. We were actually thinking that, okay, it's unfortunate and it's not ideal, but there's potentially pick 4, 6, and 7 here, and I think we already had pick 4. There's some good players. We can just keep going, and we loved Jake Lever at the time, and there's a couple of others that have turned out pretty good players. Liam Duggan that we really loved, and it was just about let's just push on.
The decision to make Griff captain, in hindsight, given his character, he was a pretty low-key sort of guy, didn't like media and the like. Was that the wrong decision, do you think, in the end?
Not at the time, because he was happy with it. Did I help him develop as a captain? Could I have done it better? Yeah, I think I could have helped him as a captain and a leader. But the raw material was there to do it in his own way. The agreement Griff and I had was, you do it your way, mate. You don't have to be raucous. Players loved him, and he was. I think you've got to remember, he was coming off a year where he was nearly the best player in the game. He was unstoppable. The year he won the best and fairest, no one could stop him. And then he hurt his back pre-season, which derailed him a little bit. And he was, I don't know if he was never quite the same player, but he didn't play with the same power after that. He didn't have the same mobility, and it was a really innocuous thing at training. And it happened, I wasn't even at the session, I was out meeting a potential recruit at the time. So that's the role of a coach. There's always something to, and I was every decision and everything that was done at that time was about the future, and not at the point of excluding others and abandoning people. It was about what's going to be best for the club, for everyone. And history will show that the recruiting model has still stacked up. They just keep stockpiling fantastic young kids. The development program has been elite for a long time. The VFL program's been super, and all the coaches are still there.
So we look at Bob Murphy, and he, stepped up as the natural leader. Why wasn't Bob in that position initially?
Probably we went through a bit of a phase where there was that group of fantastic older players, and they were great men, great players, and fantastic to work with. And there was a time, and then there was a bit of a vacuum, and we had a couple of things happen in my second year, and the older guys sort of said to the older players, "You don't know us as people." And
younger guys said the
older guys. And it was Easton Wood worded. He very respectfully, and it was him basically saying, we want to get to know you guys, and I got where they were coming from, the older boys, because they all had families, they had kids, and they were at a stage in their career too where recovery is everything to get yourself up for next week, and they had sort of been part of a really great era, successful era, and then they were up to their necks in a rebuild. It was a fair dinkum rebuild, and that was pretty confronting for them, but they were up for it. So I guess there was that transition towards okay, let's develop some leaders for the future. And Boydie was really keen on Griff, assuming the leadership and taking over. He knew, and he knew that he wanted to focus on helping others and helping the young kids without the burden of captaincy or responsibility and play. So it seemed pretty seamless, really. But I think the gap was, the really strong relationship I had with Griff. I probably challenged him too much, and the lack of support really for him.
And there's some people that will just take that and lap it up, and then there's other people who, like Griff, probably don't embrace that.
Yeah, and there's probably, there's also what happens sometimes in a club or in any workplace is, you get victims, and victims are very good at conscripting people, and as a leader, you can't go there with them. You got to stay removed from it, but at the same time, you got to keep that really empathetic side. And I don't know if empathy is the right word. I probably got harder than I needed to be, and if I had my time again, apart from that half time, I probably would have gone the other way, and gone, hang on, I need to take some stock here.
You mentioned about Simon Garlick, the change in mood in that sense from that particular meeting. How was your relationship with Peter Gordon at that stage? He'd given you an extension only, a bit over 12 months earlier. Did you feel as if it was coming to an end, or was it something that you couldn't foresee, that relationship?
It was pretty solid. Pete, he would tell me what he thought. He gave me some really strong feedback. Some of it I agreed with. There was some things that I thought were unfair, but that's the way it is. It was started as a two-sided conversation, ended up one.
As they tend to.
They can do that with a coach and a president, but that was cool. He was really clear. He verbalised. He can explain things very well. And inside some of the strong criticism, there was nuggets of gold for me and learning, and and whether it got to the stage where he thought, no, we've got to make a clean break. Whether he thought I was the right bloke, I don't know. Whether he thought someone else was the right bloke, I don't know. Whether he thought Luke was going to be the right, I don't know. We didn't have those chats, but he, to his credit, on behalf of his club, he made some decisions and he was proved right. What I do know is that a lot of the building blocks were there. I got the last couple of months wrong, and you move on, and then I was able to have 5 fantastic years. I'm nearly 60. I'm still healthy. I'm still upright. I still love the game. I still feel that I'm respected in the game by people, and I haven't changed. The game hasn't changed me. In fact, I probably see it better than ever right now because I'm out of it.
Yeah. So take us through the last 24 hours before we move on. So you have a meeting with Simon Garlick, and then how does it end? Because it was within 24 hours of Griff moving on.
Yeah, Garlo went home that afternoon, and I just kept talking to Jace, read Tom Lonigan, and looking at vision of kids we potentially might draft. And Garlo rang me that night about 8 o'clock and said, "Oh, look, come in tomorrow." He said, "Look, I'll be in touch." He rang me and said, "Look, come in tomorrow." And I said, "How are we looking?" And he said, "Oh, not great."
You then, from that comment, is trouble.
Gone. Yeah, you're onto it, Glenn. When they say it's not looking great, so
it's not looking good.
I shared that with the family, and
how do you sit down to your family and tell them?
Oh, the kids were disappointed.
Tough.
Yeah, they
have 5 kids.
They were disappointed.
Very close to the wall.
Yeah, they were disappointed because they go on the journey with you. Obviously, every coach will tell you that. And anyone, same for you guys in your working life. They share your days, your good and not so good times. But it was a funny day, and I'll probably never forget it as long as I live. Just the way it played out. I didn't want to do. I chatted with Graham Lowe and Simon and Pete that morning at about 8 o'clock, and we agreed to part ways. And I was still in the building for about 4 hours, and I said, I don't want to do a press conference. I'm not interested in that. But I wrote a letter to the members and just reminding them that there was some fantastic leaders there, fantastic players, great staff, that despite what you're hearing and seeing, this place is going to go forward and it'll keep progressing. And then the press conference was starting to happen, and everyone waltzed in like I talked about before. I went down to meet them. This time I wasn't in the meeting, but there was probably more in there this time. And the photographer guys were heading out towards Barclay Street, so I saw them walk past my office window, and walked out straight behind. They didn't even see me, and walked through the daycare centre and had a couple of cans with some construction workers in the construction yards, and got in the car and
fantastic
drove home. Had to listen to the first 5 minutes of the press conference and didn't really like what I was hearing.
He said there was a deterioration that happened. That's what Peter Gordon said. And, mindful of the fact that 2 weeks before, or about that time, they'd said, "You're our man. These are the issues you need to work on." And you'd said, "Yes, I will do that."
Yeah, I didn't do anything different. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I actually just got to work, and again was every decision we were making was around what's going to be best for the club going forward. And
so what do they say to you in that meeting when you know you're fired, they know you're fired? What's that meeting like?
No, it was just an offer made, around settling things, and and by then you're not really listening. I rang a friend and got some advice. He knew more about that stuff than I, and he said, "Look, no, just it's time to go, mate."
Can't fight it, I suppose, can you, in that sense? And
yeah, I've
some have tried.
Yeah, I've sort of shared it. I said, "Look, it goes like this, They sort of asked me to think about resigning, and I said, but I don't really want to resign. If I don't want to resign, what will happen?" They said, "We'll get you to resign." So that's sort of how it went. It was a very respectful chat, and it was difficult for them. It's I've had to be part of conversations that finish coaches and players' careers, and it's not easy. And I respected that they had a decision to make. They'd made a decision, and I bear no ill feeling. I probably was a bit cranky with Pete for a while in my own mind.
Yep.
For I reckon 2 or 3 months. But I said something one day, and a really great friend said, "You can't pass bitterness on. People aren't interested in your bitterness. You'll actually turn people away from you, and
it's
that
toxic, isn't it?
It's toxic." So, and I got on with life, and I got a chance to refresh. I fixed up a couple of skin cancers and felt better about myself, and got on with living, and went to Melbourne and had a ball. From the very first day I was there, I loved working there.
Just the last one on the Bulldogs. If Ryan Griffin doesn't make that phone call to leave the club, do you think you would have coached in 2015?
I think so. Yeah, I can't answer that though. If Pete was in the room, we might shake hands, eventually, and he's the right man to ask that. Gut feel, probably. Yeah, probably. There's always one last little bit of twig that cracks the axle in there, and that. But it was a pretty big twig. It was more like a full tree, wasn't it?
And your thoughts 2 years on when the Dogs win a flag?
Because Griff watches the last 15 minutes in a petrol station, seeing it unfold, obviously proud, but realising what he missed. But you did it with pride, knowing that you had built the bedrock for this side.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were watching with friends, and their initial reaction was a little bit of sympathy for me, which I didn't want. I wasn't interested in that. I was just happy for the club, really happy for the players and the coaches, because all the coaches we'd put in place were there, and I knew they are great men. They're still all there. They're fantastic football men and great teachers and great leaders. So overwhelming, probably had a minute of, geez, it's good for footy and good on them,
So the Melbourne Footy Club, and this is, I think, what how to sum up what you do. Someone said Jaden Hunt dropped his head in a game, and the next week you said, "Come with me," and you went off to a side of the oval, and a big bloke just kept on tackling as he tried to pick the ball up, and this went for half an hour, and a couple of hours, but it changed Jaden Hunt as a player. Is that story true, and is that what you did so well?
Who was tackling him? Me?
A big player was, I think, it dragged one of the big players across. Yeah. But you taught him how not to drop his head, for one of a...
Possibly, yeah, but also it was the start of... it's the quickest way to connect with a player, because ultimately they all want to develop and do well. So if they can... And they will wander through their career knowing that there's some gaps in their game, and they'll seek the help. And when they find it, it usually sparks a great connection. It's not always the coach to the player. Sometimes it's them to the coach. So it was part of that. It was also just getting to know him, taking him to the footy. Because I saw him he kept getting injured, and they're all a bit different, but he had a broken jaw, and he snuck back into training somehow. And Melbourne then weren't just a club that really didn't know how to play. They didn't know what a training session looked like and a footy week looked like. And it was no one person's fault, and there's no finger pointing here. The whole week just wasn't quite right, and a lot of work and energy went into that. But I saw Hunty sneak back into training into a drill that he shouldn't have been in and go head first for a ball. That told me. So I've always believed if someone chases and tackles and puts their head down over a ball, they're a pretty good kid. They're a pretty good player, pretty good person, and that's the first thing you're looking for. So that was enough to tell me that he was just a quiet kid who'd had a bad back injury, who didn't know where he fitted and where he belonged. Because in the end, in a footy club, if they belong, they're right. And if they belong for the right reasons, they're really right. So if they belong because of how they play and participate and train, if they belong because they're a knucklehead and they're on the drink, that's belonging, but it's not really belonging. And he just wanted to fit in and wanted to play footy with Melbourne. And so, yeah, we did some work. But there was lots of instances, you know. The big blokes were a bit nice one week, so I got Brad Miller to just kick balls up to them, and they just went at balls from the top of the 10-yard square. And you laugh and you hear this one too, do you? I said, look, I don't care how long we do this, but we're going to keep doing it until you start launching at the ball, because they're looking for a body. I said, just jump at the ball. And they started to do it, and Gorney was one of them, Cam Pedersen, Fitzy, and someone I can't remember who it was, but they were, and that day, and I'm not taking credit for Max Gorney. Good, he's done. He's the link with and staff with Gorney. He started to launch at the ball and play with a real ferocity and intensity, you know.
How much work did you have to do on the psychology of the players at that time? You talk a little bit about that. The club had been, you know, in the doldrums for quite some time, and had probably people had said had a bit of a loser's philosophy at that stage.
Probably the method, whenever the method was there, to say it's nearly there. You know, it's nearly there. And we taught outnumbering and contest method really heavily. Simon, the year I had with him at Essendon, he was a believer in it. He'd seen it work at the Bombers, and he knew it was the key. The inconsistent teams generally are inconsistent around the ball, and vice versa. It's consistent teams are very reliable in the contest area. Yeah, there's kicking and there's ground opening and there's stoppage structure, but the essence of the game is the ball is winnable so often that if you get that right, you're a chance. And there's a method to it, you know, when to go in, when to hold out, when to get up the ground and open it up. And that's learnt. And it does take 3 or 4 years to, and if you've never been exposed to it, it's quite confronting. So the positive message was just keep doing this. It's very close. So that's what I think they needed, that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and to use one of Frank's great terms, it wasn't a train coming at them the other way. You know, there was a way through this, and then there were little bits in games and that's the key to it. But they wanted to do it. They wanted to believe. But the thing that had to happen first, they had to learn to train well every week. So there's playing, there's training, and there's all the little things around it. Training is the most important thing, because that's where all your behaviours and habits are formed, not in games. They're reinforced in games or audited in games, but if your training is not right, you've got no hope of playing well on the weekend. If it's right, you've got a chance.
Clayton Oliver's the one that we've all just loved seeing develop into just a superstar player. What did you love about playing, extracting the best from players like him and Christian Petracca and Angus Brayshaw? Yeah,
they're hearts and they're good kids. They're all different. So Clary was just so headstrong, you know, which for some coaches can be a real turn-off. You know, they can be, just hang on, this kid's not going to listen, so he's not going to make it. You know, why was he headstrong? He there's a way to connect with Clary, people like Clary, and there's a way not to. You know, but I was pretty strong with him, pretty direct. He got some feedback I sent him off to get feedback from a raft of people, and it was, not only was it resounding in some areas, it was consistent. I said, so it means that this isn't made up, mate. There's quite a few people, and you know,
are they like tough conversations? They're pretty brutal back and forth, and they're pretty willing, or
sometimes, yeah. He hung up on me on the phone one night. He denies it, but he did. And I rang him back and said, "You ever hang up on me again? This is not going to be great." And we were right after that. But yeah, he's just so competitive, you know. Sometimes he's as competitive as I've ever met as a footballer, which is going to stamp him as a super player. You know, he's up there with Joel for competitiveness. You know, his drive to win and compete. He can't do it all the time because physically he's still maturing. Like we haven't seen anywhere near the best of him yet. There's a lot more to come.
So a bit handball happy last year. He's not amazing defensively. I mean, they're things we think, why doesn't he alter that? But he is pretty dogmatic in the way he plays, and maybe he feels like he's doing it the right way.
Yeah, our contest method was down last year, and that resulted in a lot of breakdown at the contest area. We were a little bit inconsistent with our 1 metre wall. So when I talk about that, it's what happens within a metre of the ball, and if I'm going for the ball and I'm fumbly and not strong at it, it's really difficult to make decisions for my teammates. But if I'm clean and I stand up in the tackle and I'm strong, and if you're playing with someone and they grit their teeth when they go, you actually feel pretty good that something's going to happen. But when they sort of wander in, what do I? So a lot of the times we were either caught too far away or in too tight, and more often it was the latter, and that was the response was handballs that didn't go anywhere, but they'll sort that out. I know they've simplified everything back to what was taught 4 years ago. Melbourne are going to be just fine. They'll be fine.
At what stage after the 2018 season, fantastic season, did you realise in the pre-season we're not quite prepared for 2019 physically as much as anything else?
The camp. We only had about 20 on the track.
Yep.
And we lost 3 in a day and we're down to 17 players. So it meant that we couldn't do the work that we wanted to do because we'd have no players left. The midfield, and all with very good reasons, couldn't compete, couldn't hit, couldn't tackle, and midfielders have to do the contact stuff in the off season. But I thought we weren't quite as good as what everyone thought we were the year before.
The previous year?
Yeah, Hawthorn probably nearly could have got us in the final. West Coast, the game was over after 10, 15 minutes. We were very much still a work in progress, and it was a tough year, It was a tough year to be part of. It was a tough year to watch. Tough for Melbourne people, but you got to know where your group's at too. Always optimistic and forever hopeful, but the reality was, this is only a personal thing, that we weren't at the level that other people thought we were. There was still a lot of growth.
The guys famously cancelled a pre-season camp and they felt it was too tough. What was your thoughts on that? Because I reckon maybe 1999 Brendan McCartney might have been pretty harsh on it, but maybe you realise these kids are different these days.
Yeah, they presented their reasons for it. Maybe we mightn't have communicated the rationale for it. The camp had really strong impact on them the year before. Probably drew a couple of injuries out of it that we may have managed better, but it was more positive than negative. And I think as men they'll look back in years to go and go, gee, that was pretty good for me. It was really important. It was brutal what they went through. Goody and I watched the whole thing unfold in front of us. We knew they were dealing with a bit when they wouldn't even look at us or talk to us. I got a wink out of Louis on the second day, and that was it. And he just went, "Look, this is tough, but we're going to keep slugging through it." But out of respect, I know Simon was deeply affected by it for about 12 hours. And we had some chats. And
when they said they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, and it was a reality. He was really keen on it. We all were. And we had a chat as a coaching group, and we got on with it. We when we left the room on the Monday, we all spoke about, well, this could be an absolute positive. The players having a say in their future, and there's an accountability now for them, and they delivered on that. And we said, righto, it's done. There was no mention of it. We just got on with it.
And it really didn't impact the club at all.
No. It may in time be even more beneficial that they had the. Can I say kahunas?
Stones, yeah.
Yeah, which is Spanish for nuts, isn't it?
It is.
Kahunas to actually speak up and stand by their word and respect that.
And yet the media, turned it into a massive affair. The media's role, I mean, you were really upset when people, cast aspersions about you and Simon Goodwin. And yet, as you said, he was the bloke that got you across there. You guys had a fantastic relationship.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I rang you, didn't I?
Yeah, we wrote about it the next day.
Yeah, I was aggrieved, for Simon and the club more than anything. For me, I knew I was probably done, at that level.
You're not trying to protect your reputation at that stage.
No, but it was for Goody. It wasn't good for him. We're great mates. And I loved. He's a fantastic young coach. The players love him. He gets the game. He can teach it. But he's going to need more time. They still might be a group that, and I know I just said 3 minutes ago they're going to be fine, and they will be, but they mightn't be quite ready yet. Yet the expectation is there that they're going to rebound, and it's done work like that. They're one of the few teams over 4 years that improved every year. They're coming from a low base, but last year was a hiccup for a lot of reasons. They've learnt from it. The club's learnt from it. I don't know where it came from, and I don't care now. It gave me the irrits middle of last year, hence I rang you, and I'd never rung a journo in my life, really, and so... Yeah.
So someone will do a coaching pressure index soon, and he'll be up there, and so will Kenny Hinkley. What do you say about that, having been inside a club and realising the reality? And realising that those things can get those coaches because it's a media game.
Yeah, it does. It can. Because I think everyone reads it. Your players read it. Everyone's, your coaches, supporters. It can get to you, but you just need good support and good belief, and be really clear about what you're doing. And coaching, senior coaching is it. For a long time, it was all about your knowledge and your experience, and I thought that for a long time, that the more you knew about the game and the better you could teach it, that would be it, because that's all they want. But players want much more than that. They want to know that they want recognition, they want encouragement, they want praise, they want you to know that they want to know predominantly you care enormously about them as people. And then they start to care about what you know. How
did he handle it all through last year, Goody, from what you could see? The pressures and the stresses of what he went through?
Pretty good. Thought there was a level of embarrassment too at times, because you get asked in that role, you already know where you're at when you come off the ground, and then you've got the players, potentially got the president and the board, potentially some key corporate people. Every club's different, but I've seen that happen, or been experienced that happening. You've got potentially your leaders then. You might have 2 or 3 young players that you've got to pick up off the floor. You've got 1 or 2 interviews, and then you've got a press conference.
Those press conferences can be brutal sometimes straight after a game.
Yeah.
How did you handle them?
I don't know. All right, I think. I was pretty honest. Yeah, you always knew the Bulldog supporters in the room because their questions had a bit more.
Steve-O would have been
it's
up
like
the front,
Ralphie when he had a Richmond press conference.
Exactly.
When
I deny that. No, you're right. It's true. Yeah.
In their crook year, 2016. It affects us all.
Yeah.
And when you're outside a club, it's your whole week. You're talking about it the whole time. When you're inside a club, you actually haven't got time for that. You've got to move on quite quickly. But I think he handled really. He kept his rapport and connection with the players really well, and that's not easy to do, which is a measure of the man. He's a remarkable young fella.
Just before we let you go, what's the biggest issue in football for players? Is it gambling? Is it drugs? And obviously mental health is intertwined with all of those issues.
Probably all of the above. I think balancing their own identity with what people want them to be. Understanding where they're at as maturing men, especially young men, that their brains aren't mature yet, their bodies still are maturing. Counterbalancing all that, establishing what support actually is for them, who are the people that, and it's generally not a program, it's the people that they connect with. Probably that, and balancing that with just understanding themselves and enjoying what they've got, and I think on top of that, it's if they keep their gratitude and their humility, they'll be all right. If they always remember the great opportunity that's right there in front of them, and balance that with humility, because we just have this, I don't know, as humans, we have this incredible capacity to push people away from us that aren't good for us, or run away from fire and accidents and all that sort of stuff. Yet we welcome, shocking thoughts into our head. We actually say, "Come on, climb in. This is good," but it's not.
A single negative comment with 100 positive.
Yeah, and what is really taking place quickly at AFL level is coaching groups and staff having a really good understanding of mental health, what it is, and an appreciation that it can go up and down in an hour and a day, And in an industry like this, for young men, they can go from struggling to coping to thriving in the space of 5 minutes, and then back the other way, and then back the other way. So, and that can happen really quickly.
Once the coach, always the coach. Tell us about Brendan McCartney 2020 and beyond. What you're doing, what you want to do into the future. Great mate of mine, Susie Robinson, and I've got a little business called Player Coach. So we're growing it. It's a lot of fun. We've got a one club program which we've got with 4 clubs this year: Cobden, Geelong Amateurs, Ocean Grove, and Bell Park, where we work with the senior coach down. We're about to start my old high school's sports academy program. We're going to Bell Park High, which is now Western Heights. So my life's done a full circle. It's in the old Teachers College building that I went to uni at years ago in the 80s and 70s, late 70s. Some coach mentoring, level 2 stuff with the AFL. I'm going to be the ambassador for Tackle Your Feelings in local footy, which is mental wellbeing stuff that is hopefully going to reach 1,000 clubs in the next 5 years around Australia. A little bit of media, Addy and K-Rock, and after that I don't know. What else? I've left something out that's going to be really important. And the girls, the Falcons girls, I've got them, which I'm loving, having a ball coaching them. So, and then I just wander around and run into people, and that ends up, can you come and do this for us? But it's pretty good, you know. I think, I don't know, I said in a level 2 the other day, I felt like I've been on the tram tracks for a long time, and you don't get a chance to get off them. And I'm at a stage now where I think I understand, see the game, teach the game better than I ever have, and because I've got time to do it. You know, maybe that's the thing for AFL footy, give people time to step away from it and give them a couple of months off, or let them have a year away and then bring them back. You know, it might be better for all of us in the long run.
You watched senior, you coached junior. Which Gary is better?
Oh, jeez. Ralphie.
Last season when they finished, Ralphie.
They're different.
Guy McInnes says, having coached junior, he's clearly the better player.
Is it clearly? How do you? What do you base that on?
Words in his mouth, but he believes he's the better player.
Geez, it got hot in here. All of a sudden. I think senior's just freakish, wasn't he? With but Gary for longevity and consistency. So for me, the mark of a player is their longevity and what they bring every week. So, you know, probably the little champ. You know, he was just unstoppable for 10 years. Well, it's 10 years he was unstoppable for, and he's still unstoppable in patches now, isn't he? When he wants to be.
Enright or Dool. I mean, for you to have seen Enright close up as one of the great halfbacks the game's ever seen.
Yeah, they were similar. That both of them, like Boris, his method was simple. He just defended his opponent, and as soon as he drifted out of play or he wasn't getting used, he joined in offence. And Dooley was a bit the same. Jeez,
Tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I was going to ask you, Silvani.
I thought the tough questions were finished.
Silvani, Scarlett again.
Fantastic players, but Scarlett's the best player I've ever had anything to do with in terms of impact on a team, and you know, and through his career, he kept us in games when we were no good, got us over the line as we got a bit better, and then sort of got absolved into a great group when they became great. But he was even a better player. He was defending better and attacking better, but no one took any notice because of all the other champions. And he set standards of intensity and competitiveness that I've never seen, you know. And he did it without saying much. He just did the training. You know, if someone was soft over the ball, he sat them on their backside, or, you know, if a kick was sloppy, he'd knock it out of bounds. You know, without saying anything, he built standard and culture. And
just the last one, the underrated bloke from Geelong through that amazing premiership era.
Joel Corey. Yeah. I think Tommy was underrated, but so respected for his captaincy. But Joel's ability to connect with his teammates and just turn up every week and play. And he was probably him and James Kelly, I reckon. Like, Kel was a phenomenal player. He was those two. That's probably line ball. Those two stand out.
Brendan, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks. Good on you, Brendan.
Good on you, boys.